Kravitz. If you have not followed his Triple H horse racing podcast, you're missing out. It's one of the best podcasts in the country.
Good evening and welcome to episode 276 of the HHH Racing Podcast. I'm your proud host, Howard Kravitz. Thank you very much for joining us on a very special and interesting discussion about the unfortunate announcement that Golden Gate Fields in the San Francisco Bay Area, technically Albany, California, will be closing at the end of their 2023 meet. Please make sure you subscribe on the bottom right hand side of the screen. After you do that, hit that notification bell and also hit the like button, that thumbs up button. We greatly appreciate it. That sends the YouTube algorithm to our show, and we had a tremendous amount of viewers and listeners last week for the opening week of Saratoga. We can't thank you enough, and we have a ton of shows happening this week as well. We have a live show every day on this YouTube channel through Sunday, whether it be a night show, our new Saratoga Today morning shows. Please look at the YouTube channel or go to our website, hhhracingpodcast.com, for an update, as you can see scrolling on the bottom of the screen as well, of our shows coming up. Of course, you can follow me on Twitter at hkravitz, which is on my name tag, and also scrolling at the bottom of the screen, my email, hkravitzhorse@gmail.com. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor. Tonight is not as much about promoting our picks, but I'll go ahead and do that. We have power picks down below the video player. If you are interested in Del Mar specifically, we're going to be covering Del Mar like a glove on our regular power picks tip sheet that we've had for 2.5 years now. So please check that out below the video player. We also have brand new as of last week, Saratoga only power picks. Again, look below the video player or go to our website for information on that. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and bring on. I have two special guests that I'd like to bring on this evening. Well, one is very special. The other one is just some old guy who writes for the Saratoga Special and does a great job. Just kidding about the old part, Paul. Writes for the Saratoga Special from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Mr. Paul Halloran, and our real special guest tonight. She's been on before. She actually tipped out Society at, what was that, 9-1 or whatever it was, Paul, on Parks Day, but she's a lot more than that. She's a terrific person that's involved in horse racing. Most specifically, currently, she's the track announcer at Parks Racing. Let's bring her on, Miss Jessica Paquette. Hi, guys. How we doing tonight?
Paul is really the very special guest. Let's be clear.
No, this takes age before beauty and puts it to an entirely new level. It's piling on.
Completely agree with you, Paul. Jessica, before we get to the topic of conversation, just tell everyone how Parks Racing is going. And as we, the Penn Derby is getting closer and closer, actually, as we get to the middle of the summer here, approaching August.
There's some exciting things happening. I'm having a great time at Parks, getting my feet under me. I know I was a little slow out of the gate, but it's not necessarily how you start, it's how you finish. And we have the $1 Million Pennsylvania coming up in September, along with the Cotillion, 2 Grade 1s. Smarty Jones Day. Smarty Jones Stakes Preview Day is when we come back from the Parks break in a few weeks on August 22nd. So graded stakes then, a nice prep for the Pennsylvania Derby. It's been a lot of fun.
Oh, the Parks Racing's been great. I've been betting. I've been watching it. A little bit too much rain, as it's been the case in Saratoga and some other places. But listen, you can't control Mother Nature. We got some people watching Minnesota horse racing. Hello, Minnesota horse racing. Thanks for joining the show. Michael Austin has a comment already about Golden Gate. We'll get to that in just a minute. Guys, we're going to discuss here for about half an hour the unfortunate, well, I think most people would agree, the unfortunate announcement from the Stronach Group, who owns Golden Gate Fields, as well as Santa Anita and some other locales, that they're going to be shutting its doors. I believe I saw the last race date at Golden Gate will be December 10th of this year. And there's a lot of reasons, and we could have a 2-hour show, and we could make it a 3 or 4 part series, but we're going to discuss this for half an hour. And guys, I want to talk about this on 3 sort of different levels that we spoke of before the show. And if you are watching live, we'd love to hear your comments in the chat, whether we will agree, disagree. you can be a little controversial. That's okay. We like to have an open forum here and discussion as long as the comments are appropriate. But please make sure you comment in the chat based on some things that we say. And if you're listening to this later through our audio platforms, please make sure you discuss your comments below the video player here on YouTube. We'd like to hear what you guys have to say. So the first thing that we're going to talk about, Paul and Jessica, and let me take the scrolling banner off the screen here. You'll see our general topics at the bottom. The potential, and I say potential because we don't know exactly how this is all going to work, but the human cost and the sacrifice have to be made. Unfortunately, one of the reasons why we have you two on, Paul and Jessica, is because near and dear to your heart is Suffolk Downs, and they unfortunately closed their doors. I live 20 minutes from Arlington Park, and of course, they closed their doors, and actually the roof is coming off as we speak. If you watch Twitter, it's just absolutely heartbreaking. Speak a little bit, Paul. I'll go to you first. Just the human element. Let's forget about the horses just for a minute, but there are a lot of people that work at the track. There's just a lot behind the scenes. There's a million things that are happening, and just to sort of get up and move or switch jobs or have to move your children to a different school is not easy at all. And to say he's underrated would probably be insulting.
Yeah, and I could tell you, I'll mention someone Jess knows well, Jay Bernardini, who was a leading trainer at Suffolk Downs. His house is, I could throw a baseball to his house from where I'm sitting right now. He's in Lynn, Mass. And, Jay decided to stay in the business, but Jay trains at Mountaineer, and I think he's at Mahoning Valley. And, but yet his wife works for TSA at Logan. So, she's here, he's there, obviously he does a lot of back and forth, but, for every Jay Bernardini who decided to stick it out and go somewhere else, as Jess can attest, there are probably 2 or 3 others who just got out of the business. And that's, I think human cost is probably is a good way to put it. And that's I'm talking to people working at the track, but people at the track. Jess knows I had my beloved turf club at Suffolk Downs, my Saturday afternoon sanctuary, and some of the guys that I go up there with, I'm going to be having dinner with in Saratoga in 2 weeks. So there's so many levels of sadness when we lose one of these tracks, whether it's big, small, or in between. And I do think human cost is a good way to put it, and that's really the saddest part of it.
And Jessica, unfortunately, in the Bay Area, it looks like the Oakland A's are also going to be moving baseball teams. So there's a lot of people that work inside of sports venues in the San Francisco Bay Area. They're going to have to get up and look for different jobs. There's concessions, there's programs, there's just, there's maintenance people. There are a lot of different entities go into running a racetrack on a day-to-day basis.
Well, and the thing is, ultimately, for most of us that work in racing, this isn't just what we do. Our entire self-identity gets wrapped up in our role in horse racing. It's so much more than a job to most of us, to the horsemen and women. It's a 7-day-a-week, 365-day-a-year sort of job. But for those of us that work in the front side or in media or in other ways, it's still like our whole sense of self is wrapped up in this. So I can definitely say when your racetrack, the one that is, your home base, closes, it causes a little bit of an existential crisis where you go, what is my role here still in the sport? Do I still have a place in the sport? I'm a little bit of a road warrior. Home is still in Massachusetts, and I drive back and forth to Philly each week while I'm pursuing this at Parks for now. And it's not easy. And your point about Jay Bernardini, Paul, is right. Like, he's making it work, being very successful out of town, but home is still Massachusetts for him. And then I have the Kirby, like John and Tim Kirby are training horses here at Parks, and I'm sure they miss their beautiful farm in Dover.
No question. There's a few comments here in the chat from Jeff Amster, not related, but Paul, I joined the special readers club today and recommend joining for everyone who reads the special either online or in Saratoga. Off topic, but Paul, you're doing a great job as usual with the Saratoga special, the whole crew, Tom Law and everyone. Saratoga special is fantastic. A comment here from Michael Austin who said, well, it's the problem when local politics and culture, we're going to talk about that, are against the sport and set it up to fail. So just can be no Golden Gate. I don't know about we just just say, well, we just can't have Golden Gate. But Michael, I do understand what you're saying. He also said that that area is completely failing and more quote unquote normal leisurely activities are non-existent there. There are issues throughout the country and on many fronts. Real quick, but for Tom Espinoza. Tom Espinoza is a great viewer of the show, Jessica. He actually lives in the Bay Area. I think he lives closer to Sacramento. But he said last visit to Golden Gate on 211, the entire staff entering the track and turf club were outstanding, along with the food. That happens from dedicated workers. Tom, listen, I hear it. Paul actually talked to Tom Espinoza on the phone yesterday. And they're devastated out there, Jessica. I mean, there are true horse racing fans everywhere in the country. I wouldn't say San Francisco is a big mecca of horse racing, but it is a big, obviously, population location. And anytime you lose a track in a big population like here in Chicago, although we have a lot more of history here with horse racing with bigger races and whatnot, that's X amount of people who are not going to see or be exposed to horse racing on a daily basis.
Well, and you're missing the chance for so many, young, not just young people, but people in general to fall in love with the sport and also have opportunities to work in the sport. Because as kind of the industry shrinks, there's going to be less and less entry level or entryways into the sport for people that want to work in any capacity. I mean, I think so many of us that work in the industry, we got our start at small tracks where you got to do a little bit of everything because it was a small track and everyone had to pitch in, and you kind of learned to do the job at hand. Whereas, I mean, in some of these bigger tracks, it's going to be like, if you do find a way in, it's going to be a very specific, like, intern type of program, which is great, and everyone needs a way in, but you learn a little bit more hands-on at a small track and you get more chances there.
And Paul, it's fair to say that the top people at Golden Gate, the people that are that have the most exposure in a positive way, for example, track announcer Matt Dinnerman does a great job. Like, these people you would figure will land on their feet at some point, but it's the little guys, right? It's the backstretch workers, it's the maintenance people, it's the concessions. Those are the ones, like Jonathan Wong. He's already has stable throughout the country, so he'll be okay. But it's the little guy that really gets hurt in these situations.
Yeah, and someone put in the chat, and I think it's a good point. When Stronach Group talks about consolidating the racing downstate, we're not talking about San Francisco to LA being 30 minutes away. It's almost another world. Forget about the quality of the horses for a second, but just logistically, you're back into a Jay Bernardini situation. If your whole existence is in Northern California, you can't ship down to Santa Anita on race day. You can't. It's going to get old pretty quickly, right?
And the cost of things changes at various locations in the country, or even in various parts of the state in California. You're going to be, I imagine, paying more for some of the basic things that you need to care for horses in these kind of more affluent areas.
Can you two talk a little bit about the human costs at Suffolk Downs specifically? Now, there are a lot of tracks in the Northeast, so it's not as if people that live in the Boston area can't find another track to go to. However, that was a devastating blow to people in the Boston area as well. Can you talk a little bit about what it's like to lose a track in a bigger population area? Unfortunately, you have experience with that.
And we've experienced with two in New England. I mean, two major thoroughbred tracks with Rockingham and with Suffolk. And the fact that throughout New England, an entire region, there is not a single thoroughbred track. You can go to there, you can find a harness track, but you have to look pretty hard because it's not like some of these really promote themselves all that well at this point. And that no one in New England can stay in New England and go see a live thoroughbred race it's a tragedy. But it's not only just that you can't bring fans to the racetrack. It's the agricultural impact that a working racetrack has on the economy around it. I mean, a working thoroughbred track supports breeding farms and farriers and veterinarians and tax stores and all of these ancillary employees that kind of work with the horses or provide supplies for the horses and horsemen and women that then, don't have anything.
And Howard, we should point out, yeah, I mean, the Golden Gate situation, the Stronach Group, they base their decision on what they base their decision on. In our case here, it didn't have to happen. Suffolk Downs was the best spot for the Boston casino license. A casino at Suffolk Downs would have kept racing alive for a minimum of 20 years by contract. It was a site, obviously, where gambling had been going on for 60-something years. And in our case, all that Jessica just reeled off, all that residual stuff, and the reckless actions of the Massachusetts Gaming Commission in not giving the casino license to the group that was going to site it at Suffolk Downs. They turned their back on all those people, and they knew that it was going to be the end of an industry. So that it might have happened here at some point. It certainly didn't have to happen when it did. That there was a lifeline there. And in our case, it just fell victim to the sheer corruption that exists in our state, and the proposal that was not the best proposal given to Steve Wynn and his 5-star resort on the Revere Somerville Chelsea line. They need 5 stars, like I need another ice cream, but that's another story for another day. So it's extra sad that it happened to us, because it didn't have to.
And I do understand the different situation with the struggling horse population and the desire to prop up the field size at Santa Anita, which is a jewel. I mean, Santa Anita is a crown jewel in the industry and should be preserved as long as it can be. It is, I mean, if you haven't been to Santa Anita, it is really one of the most magnificent racetracks I've ever been to. It's just the loss of any racetrack to me, just breaks my heart a little bit.
It breaks my heart. And Arlington was different situation, of course, than Suffolk, but somewhat similar. And I don't want to get into Churchill Downs Incorporated, and they've been very good to us here on the show, and we're not here to demean anyone or to rip on people. But the fact of the matter is that if that situation was handled differently by CDI, Arlington would still be standing today, and there'd be racing. So that was also a casino situation, and again, there's a lot more to it. The situation in California is a little bit different. We're going to get to that in just a minute. Raymond Cromley on the bottom said the Ohio racinos have not lived up to its billing, at least in his opinion. So maybe racinos are not always the answer.
Yeah, but we weren't talking a racino. This is a full-blown casino. There were 3 licenses available in Massachusetts, 1 in the Boston area. This is for a full-blown resort-type casino. And why would you put a resort casino next to an airport? That would be crazy. Anyway, I digress.
Why would you?
You can tell,
Jessica,
Howard, I have not gotten over this.
Yeah, no, we never will. I think we will.
I'm not nearly over Arlington right now. Jessica, do you want to comment on the bottom? Tom Cat. Tom is a new person that I've seen in the chat. Thanks for joining the show, Tom. Said, sadly, are we saying racing can't survive without casinos? Thought on that, Jessica?
I don't think it's that it can't survive, but I think be doing a better job making sure our product can stand on its own. I think that there should be constant, market the sport as best as possible, make it more appealing to the horse players, and find different ways to get a younger set of eyes and a younger audience educated and engaged, because I do think the entry to the sport can be a little intimidating to a novice.
No question. Let's get to the other. There are many aspects to this. And once again, if you're just joining us today, this is not a handicapping show. I'm speaking to co-host Paul Halloran and wonderful track announcer at Parks Racing, Jessica Paquette. We're discussing the situation at Golden Gate that was announced over the weekend, that they're going to be shutting their doors in December. The Stronach Group is decided to, they're hoping to at least consolidate the horses in California, and their hope is to bring a lot of horses down to Santa Anita in Southern California. That is yet to be determined, because if you're paying attention to the articles in the news, a lot of people in Northern California are saying, we're not just going to go down to Southern California just because you say that we should. So that's a whole other debate. Let's talk about that right now, guys, a little bit. Let's talk about the horses specifically. Northern California, and let's talk about Golden Gate. That's, I would say, a mid-level track, to be fair. I think Arlington was at that point when they closed. I think you'd agree Parks is somewhere in that area. Jessica, it's not the top of the top, but it's certainly, not towards the bottom either. It's good quality racing that is needed throughout the country. But there are many horses
placed in the week. We are just smartly placed with the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday schedule to get matched.
Yes, no doubt. But there's some very nice horses that are running at parks, and then there's some lower level horses like there are in many tracks throughout the country. The problem with Golden Gate, guys, is that's the same situation. There's only a certain percent of those horses that could compete at San Anita in that circuit, while others are best fit there. Like your, let's just take your basic, a 62.5, N2X claimer, right? That is not going to be able to run at San Anita unless they change their stance of the lowest claiming price. I think they have is $10,000 right now. So I know Sacramento and some other locales in Northern California, some fair circuits, they're having discussions as we speak. I know the news just came out on how they could perhaps have more racing up in that area. But there's only a certain amount of horses that can actually run, Paul, in at San Anita based on their quality. So there's a real conundrum here.
Yeah, and I touched on that earlier. That's why I don't think it's realistic to think that, we'll just have these horses all move down to Arcadia and everything, and we'll solve the problem of horse flesh in Southern California. I just don't. I just don't think it's realistic for a number of reasons. The geography, which I mentioned, the caliber of horses, Howard, which you mentioned, and again, back to the what do you do if you got two kids in school, and they go to school in the Bay Area, it's difficult. Hopefully it'll help the product in Southern California because it needs help. And if you talk about racinos and casinos, well, California is thus far gone on without them. And they are staggering. Let's call a spade a spade. There are too many 5-horse fields at Santa Anita on Fridays and Saturdays. So, hopefully it helps, but I wouldn't be overly optimistic that A is going to lead to B.
Jessica, I've been reading some articles and I have some on the other screen. If I look to my right, that's the reason why. I know a lot of the California horsemen are getting together. Like I said, there's a possibility of a turf course being built at Cal Expo in Sacramento. However, they do have harness racing at night as of now. They're going to have to work on dates for next year. What do you see? I know we're all a little bit outsiders since we're not in California, but just based on your experience in horse racing, what is the best case scenario for Northern California trainers of horses that don't feel like they can compete at San Anita and higher level tracks?
Well, the surface is really the most interesting thing to me because we are, as an industry, continuing to have these ongoing discussions. What is truly the safest surface for us to be racing over? And, there's always the talk about maybe a broader switch back to synthetics, which that's an entirely different podcast that we could get into and discuss at great length, where I have a lot of thoughts in that area as well. But there are so limited opportunities domestically for horses to run on synthetic. So I do wonder for those folks that do have a horse that really is a synthetic only kind of horse, they are going to have to go to Turfway in the winter, but then where else? Or Presque Isle, or these other tracks with synthetic. And of course Woodbine, but they might, the bottom at Golden Gate might not really fit the bottom at Woodbine either. So there are so many questions of where do these horses fit into the landscape. The idea of building a turf course, great. It's very interesting in theory. I'm all for more turf racing, but that's not a tomorrow solution either. Those surfaces take a while to construct, and there's a lot that goes into kind of the logistics of that too.
The California Authority of Racing Fairs, CARF executive director Larry Schwartzlander, I'm getting this from the Thoroughbred Daily News article from yesterday, said that it would cost approximately $6 million to build a turf course at Cal Expo, and it would take about 6 months to build. And that isn't the end-all, be-all panacea for this issue as well. So I think the biggest issue that I have in general, and I think there are some positive ideas here for this closing, even though I don't like tracks closing at all. And I'll get to that in just a moment. Is that they didn't really take the Stronach group, at least it appears, based on all news accounts, Paul, didn't really take all the stakeholders into account. This was a bit of a unilateral decision. And when you have the money and the power, I suppose you can do that. That doesn't mean it's best for everyone in California racing or racing as a whole.
No, and Matt Miller pointed out in the chat, they're a private company running a business, and to some, they obviously have the right to run that business in a manner that they think will be most profitable. I think what they said is what I would have had them say as in my day job as a PR person. They talked about the consolidation of racing and giving it a boost and all that, but obviously it's a business decision, and they're trying to consolidate cost. I mean, it costs less to run. I don't know how many tracks they have now: Gulfstream, Laurel, Santa Anita. It costs less to operate one fewer track. There's not all those the commensurate number of jobs at Golden Gate are not going to translate to Santa Anita. So again, they have the right to do that, but let's be clear on what it was about. It's a financial decision first and foremost.
Jessica, I know you have to go in a few minutes, and we're going to talk about full crop size, Paul and I mainly. But before we let you go, first of all, thank you for coming on tonight. I know you're very busy, and we appreciate you taking the time. Is there anything in general you'd like to say, either people that are watching or listening in the Northern California or Bay Area, or California in general, on what this might mean in the big picture, and how we go forward? Is closing mid-level tracks and consolidating the answer? What is the big answer to this issue right now of smaller fields and decreasing revenue at certain tracks?
No pressure, Howard. I'll just solve all of
Why not?
Right now. That's fine. I mean, the thing I would say to everyone who has a smaller mid-level track in your backyard, go out and support it. Show up. Don't come out on the last day and say, boy, I wish I had supported this more, because then you don't have a chance anymore. So go out and support your local racetracks. Bring your friends, bring your family, drag everybody you know, and try to create some new fans along the way. And for everyone at Golden Gate, the advice that I would give, having been on the other side of a send-off, is we got to do it twice at Suffolk. We did it in 2014. We thought it was the end. It rained. It was sad. We felt defeated, and it felt like a funeral, and it sucked. And then in 2019, when we somehow got the chance to do it again, we tried to make it more of a celebration of everything that the racetrack had meant to us and to the community. And having done it both ways, celebrate it at the end if you can, and take moments to enjoy it, but celebrate the history and what the racetrack has meant to you.
I appreciate your kind words, and I think you were very eloquent in what you just have to say. And I'd be remiss before I let you go. What's coming up with at Parks? Any big stakes coming up, something this weekend, or anything you'd like to promote with Parks Racing?
Parks Racing has, we race tomorrow, and then we race next week, and then we are on a 3-week vacation, and the announcer does not have to drive 12 hours a week. So that I am looking forward to recharging my batteries for a couple of weeks, going to some horse shows. And then we come back on August 21st, Pennsylvania Day at the races, a bunch of great stakes races for Pennsylvania breds and Pennsylvania sired horses. Then August 22nd, Smarty Jones Day, the Smarty Jones Stakes, which is a big prep for the Pennsylvania Derby. A couple of other significant stakes races that day as well. And then, before you know it, it is September, and it is Pennsylvania Derby, and lots of exciting things.
Jessica, I heard a few people on the screen might be at Saratoga during the time that you're on break. Maybe we can buy you a beverage or have a nice dinner or something, perhaps.
I am trying to plan a Saratoga outing. That's on my list. I'm also trying to plan a Colonial Downs outing. So yeah, again, I'm off from the racetrack, but I'll still be at a racetrack realistically.
Terrific. Well, you're doing a great job, Jessica. We really appreciate you coming on tonight. Rest that voice, and we look forward to listening to you tomorrow at Parks Racing.
Guys, have a good night. Thanks for having me.
Thanks,
Bye,
Jessica.
Jess.
Take care. Bye-bye. All right, that's Jessica Paquette. Just wonderful.
The best.
She's the best. She does a great job at Parks, and really has a very good insight on what's going on with horse racing throughout the country and in this type of situation. Paul, let's talk about one other topic before we leave here regarding this issue. And let me get the banner up on the screen here. And that is full crop size. Now, I want to be real clear. And Paul, I don't know if you saw this. I did tweet it out. I was actually on the channel, the ABC News in San Francisco Sunday night. And I didn't really want to talk about it very much for a specific reason. And not because I wasn't proud to be on there or did anything wrong. I just had a random newscaster call me. And here's the cool part, I would say, not for me, but for all of us on the podcast. This random, not random, he's one of the sportscasters on the ABC affiliate in San Francisco. This is obviously a big newscast. He told me this because I obviously spoke to him. Did a Google search of top horse racing podcasts, and guess what name came up? We were in the top like 4 or 5, whatever, and just he saw my name and just went on Twitter and just randomly called me to speak about the closing at Golden Gate Fields, which, to be honest, so much more eloquent and appropriate, like a Peter Thomas Forentel or a Steve Bick or a zillion other people would have been much more qualified. However, that being said, I was very happy to be on the local ABC 7 10 o'clock news on Sunday night. Here's the bummer of it all. They brought up the animal rights situation. Now, I don't want to give these knuckleheads any kind of real publicity, but for fairness and to tell the story truthfully, we both know, and anyone, unless you've been hiding under a rock, that especially in the San Francisco Bay Area, there's been a lot of issues with animal rights activists. They want to shut it down, and they're taking a little bit of credit for shutting down Golden Gate, which is the most ridiculous thing we've ever heard. We both know that's not true at all, but there is that narrative out there. And it's just a damn shame.
Yeah, Howard, you don't really want to get me started on this topic because I have to make a conscious effort walking into Saratoga on the big days. Do not engage them. Do not engage them. Do not engage them. And it's hard because they are among the biggest frauds in the history of the world. What I'd like to say to them at Saratoga when they're all out there with their signs on Travers Day is, hey, where are you on the second Wednesday of the meet? Don't you care about horses dying that day? You only show up on the days the TV cameras are going to be here. So Belinda Stronach, Santa Anita made the mistake of trying to bring them to the table, thinking that if you get them to the table that, they're going to be part of the solution. They want to shut you down. So get them away from the goddamn table. Now, having said that, that doesn't mean that the industry doesn't have to do a better job. I don't know what happened to Churchill Downs, Howard. You know how many people have asked me that question? They knew we were at the Derby. Right. And, geez, what's going on at Churchill Downs? Because, once a few horses die tragically, then it becomes a major national story. Now, look at Santa Anita. Santa Anita had a really bad run. What was it, 3 or 4 years ago?
Yeah.
Since then, they've had a really good run. Del Mar, knock on wood, I think went all of last year without a race day.
The whole country, racehorsing deaths are way down. That's not just
they
us.
Are, and
as
I get it.
Fans, that's absolute
right.
fact.
It is, and you're going to hear people say, "Well, one is too many," but that's not realistic. These are working animals. Okay, yes. They're doing a job. It's not like they're at a petting zoo and they're dropping dead. They're doing a job. They're 1,200-pound animals. You've been up close to them, Howard. I spend a lot of time up close to them. 1,200-pound animals on these relatively spindly little legs, and they're going at 30 miles an hour. And, God forbid things happen. It doesn't justify it, but it's a fact of life. And all we have to mitigate it, the whole drug situation, which, there's a lot of effort into being cleaned up. It's probably in an overcorrection mode at this particular time, as evidenced by some of today's headlines. So, I have no input I want from the animal rights people because they want to shut you down. If their goal was to make the sport better, you listen to them. They want it shut down. Okay. Either, as someone said in the chat, fight back or ignore them. Forget
Paul,
about them.
They don't want cats or dogs to be your pets.
They're completely
Howard, insane.
They are frauds. Ridiculous. Any one of them. And if any one of them is listening or in the chat, come on down. Come to Saratoga. Come to Pent Parks. Okay. They are total frauds. And I engage them and I try not to engage them. But anyway, having said all of that.
All right. Well, I know I've been up close to the horses, Paul, because one had a restraining order on me. So
yes. And you
that
got
one,
too
by the way, that one, I might be picking that one this Saturday and go against my previous. Well, we'll talk about that Thursday night.
You got too close. But back to the foal crop, which I think is what you were talking about.
Let's talk about that. Let's get to the foal crop. I'm going to bring on screen, Paul, if I may interrupt. I'm going to bring on
that'd
screen.
Be good.
This is the foal crop size from the Jockey Club. I don't know if it's big enough. Hold on. I've got to actually get something else. Hold on a second here. Let me get this up on screen. Here it is. Sorry about that. All right, let me take this down. I know it's a little bit small. I don't know if I can make it any It's hard for me to make it too much bigger. I hope everyone at
No,
home can see
we could
that.
see it.
So in 1990, the full crop size was 40,333, and it didn't change really. I mean, it went down a little bit, but from 1992 it was 35,000 in the United States. We're looking at the left column, ladies and gentlemen,
Mm-hmm.
and in 2001 it was 34.7. So really from 92 to 01, it really didn't change that much. Actually, back down to 2006, it was 35. So for a good 16 years, Paul, from 92 to 07, let's say, it really didn't change much. However, you can see in the last, 17 years since 06, it has been cut in half. It has dramatically decreased. And in 2022 was estimated only about 17,300 was the crop size. So that brings up the obvious question as I bring us back on screen here a little bit. What can be done about that? Now, I'm not an agriculturist. I don't know. There are a lot of business reasons why, but if you have less horses running, Paul, then obviously you can't have as many tracks open. I mean, it's really that simple, isn't it?
Right. It's kind of a supply and demand thing, Howard. And
Yeah.
I'm not an economist, but I do think that's exactly it. And one other thing that is not to be underestimated, Howard, is how frequently or infrequently the horses run. Now,
Yes, that's another one.
look at the $10,000 claimers are not getting 3 months off like the Tapit Trices. I get it. But if you look at the average number of starts per horse over that same period, I suspect you'd see about the same percentage decrease rather. So if the full crop is going to be lower, we probably have too many races. How is that corrected? That's something the tracks have to correct themselves, and they can't figure out how to not run races on top of each other at the same post time. So
Wow.
that might be, that might be a big ask. But I do think you need some creativity. You talk to Jess. Parks has found a niche on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I don't get the colonial thing. I know that the Virginia Racing Commission was pushing. They want to get more people to the track. So they're running on the end of the week and the weekend. I thought Colonial was a great idea to be running opposite Saratoga, for that reason. But to the bigger picture, it costs a lot to own a horse, as you know, Howard. It costs a lot to breed a horse. If you want to go breed into Mischief now, I think it costs you $275. I think it's $275 now. Okay, if you want to breed to Curlin, it's in the twos, right?
Right.
So,
but we have syndicates now, which is a wonderful thing.
Are great.
So the little guy can get involved.
The little guy can get involved, and but that's another sad part of these tracks closing, Howard. It might be pretty realistic for someone who lives in the Bay Area to own a horse at Golden Gate, economically, but that same person might not be in a position to own one. It's, that's going to have the ability to run at Santa Anita. But I do think if the full crop is going to continue to decrease and we're going to run the same number of races, at some point the formula doesn't work, right?
No, I mean, you can't do it. And Charles B is exactly right on the bottom of the screen. No one wants to play 5-horse field, so handle goes down, track closes. Simple. I mean, that is a basic, easy way of looking at it, Charles. But I agree with you. And listen, guilty as charged, Paul. I love California racing. The people out there are tremendous. You're going to have a chance. You have not been to Santa Anita, correct? Is that right?
First time.
You're going to have a chance to go to Santa Anita with us for the Breeders' Cup. You're going to love it. I love Del Mar. The people are fantastic, but I've bet less money in California this year than I think in my 25 years of betting horses at a relatively high level. I have no desire to bet, 5-6 horse fields. In fact, one of the first things I do, Paul, on a random, Friday or Saturday during the summer, obviously during the school year, it's different, is go to Aquabase, I look at the entries, and I look at field sizes, plain and simple. Now, I personally, this is just for me, I'm not interested in betting, 4 claimers, non-winners of one the last 6 months in a 12-horse field. I don't want to bet real low-level horses, even if it's big fields. So the combination of big fields and high-quality horses, unfortunately, is few and far between. But that's what makes Del Mar and Saratoga so great. I'm much more interested in betting fields that are bigger. You get bigger handle. You get much more equity in the horizontal bets, right, Paul? You can't make money in a pick 4 or pick 5 when you have a total of 24 horses running in 4 races. It's simple math. So I'm looking. So from that standpoint, I do agree with the Stronach group in that. And I hope it works out, Paul. I would love to see Santa Anita go to 4-day racing, 10 races a day. There's going to be some lower level horses, races, but that's okay once in a while. I would be much more willing to bet Santa Anita in that scenario, Paul.
Yeah, and I think we might be headed back to more toward the circuits, if you will. The year round thing, or even to do most of the year, is hard. It's really hard to pull off, right? So you got. You had Hollywood and Santa Anita and Del Mar, and New York has Belmont and Aqueduct and Saratoga. But I'm saying let's look at Turfway, for example. Turfway runs in bad weather, although it doesn't get terrible in Kentucky. But you know what? Their winter meet last year was extremely successful. They had big fields. They don't have to cancel because they do have the synthetic, which I'm not necessarily in favor of. But my point is, another way to get better fields. But when we talk about fewer races, I'm not talking about running 8 instead of 10 on Saturday. I'm talking, maybe that 6-month meet has to be a 4-month meet. And, maybe there's another 4-month meet on the circuit somewhere else. Parks is taking 3 weeks off. Parks basically does run year round. God love them. But they're taking 3 weeks off, as Jessica said. But that's just becoming tougher and tougher to do, I think.
Well, Paul, as much as it pains me to say this, I talked to Matt Miller about this about 2 days ago. Unfortunately, I think we're going to see a scenario until the economics of the full crop changes. At some point, we're going to see serious racing, obviously in the Northeast. That's never going to change. You're going to see it in the Mid-Atlantic. You're going to see it to some extent in the Midwest, obviously in Kentucky. You'll see it in Florida for sure in the winter, and you'll see it in California. I have a hard time believing the death of California racing is upon us. So, but in terms of many other states and many other places, that's all we may see it, and then that would be unfortunate. However, when it is on, the quality would be so good, and that's what I'm gonna try. My takeaway from this in general is, as much as it sucks and as crappy as it is, I hope the powers that be can come together and come to a solution so that the racing we do see, Paul, is of very high quality. And there's always going to be room for the mom and pop tracks, and you need those fair races for the kids to go to in the summer, and to expose people to the races. But the real serious bettors like you and I, and the people that are serious about the game, that put in the most money, we can't have 5 and 6 horse fields running Friday, Saturday, and Sunday only. It is not going to work.
Yeah, and I think you're right on target with field size, and I do the same thing. And sometimes when you just look at the race, I instinctively will say, "Oh boy, this is a good betting race coming up," before I even look at the PPs. But I see there are 10 horses in it, so I know it's at least it is going to be a quote good betting race. I also don't want to bet non-winners of 1 in 522 days either. But
I agree.
And that's why, Keeneland and Saratoga and Del Mar, in addition to the quality of the horses, you're not getting, and New York is not immune. You'll see in the winter, you'll see Aqueduct get those 5 and 6 horse fields. You're not.
I think the synthetic's going to help that, Paul. I think the synthetic will start changing that, because I think some horses from Woodbine are going to come down to New York ideally, but that's a whole other topic of conversation.
Yeah, I just hope they don't do what Gulfstream has done and put it in for that reason, kind of as a stopgap, and then all of a sudden they're carting 3 races a day on it before a raindrop ever falls, because enough of that nonsense.
Let's get 2 comments to end the show, Paul. We got Matthew Chimura. Matthew, thanks for joining the show. So it's amazing how in California that Del Mar always has these huge fields for their summer meet, while the rest of the year you don't see it, except for some select days at Santa Anita. But Matthew, that's exactly what the Stronach group sees And that's what they're trying to avoid. They want to get bigger fields and more racing days throughout the year, and they feel like consolidating is the way to do it. I don't know if it's going to work, but that's exactly what the Stronach Group is thinking. And then finally, from Jim Pilars, our great friend of the show, Paul, great discussion on difficult topics. Wish I had something intelligent to add as a potential solution, but I too am at a loss for a workable solution. It's not easy. These are very difficult topics, and I felt like it was worth discussing tonight. So, Paul, really, thanks for coming on, and we'll see what happens here. There's no doubt that Golden Gate's going to close, and it's a damn shame for everyone in the Bay Area specifically. But there's a lot of great people out in California, Paul, and the the locales are tremendous, and I'm sure they're going to figure something out. I just hope they come together. That, again, that's my big takeaway from tonight that I want to express is, as much as I support San Nita and the Stronach Group and Laurel and their tracks, these should not be unilateral decisions. There's too many stakeholders involved, Paul. I hope they involve those stakeholders in the next coming weeks and months.
Let's hope so, Howard. The sad part about tracks closing, Howard, is you don't see any new ones opening.
No.
So every one that closes, the number is going down by one, and it's not going back up by one. There are no new ones opening, folks.
Unfortunately. I want to end the show with two little breaking pieces of news that I've not expressed on this show. Number one, you talked about building racetracks. For the first time about 15 years, Paul, I bought some Powerball tickets. So after I crush it tomorrow night, Kravitz Downs will be opening up in 2025.
You need a good PR guy. You need a good PR guy.
I think I'll see. I'll look at my Rolodex and see if I can know anyone. But number two, and I haven't mentioned this, but I'll mention it now. We'll talk about it on Thursday as well. But I was planning on going to Saratoga at the same time you were this year on Thursday, August. Let me look at the date, 3rd. However, I'd like to announce to the world or anyone who's watching, listening, that I have two horses that I partially own with Adelphi Racing that I found out are running, God willing, with the turf, with the grass and the weather right now in the Northeast, that are running on Saturday, the 29th of July and the 30th of July. And I called my buddy, Matt Miller. I said, Matt, I got a little, I wonder if you're interested in doing something with me. So long story short, we are for sure, Paul, Matt Miller and I, going to be going up to Saratoga earlier than expected. We will be there starting Saturday, July 29th, for the sole purpose to see two Adelphi horses, hopefully running one Saturday, one Sunday. And we will be there for a full 8 days, if we can last that long, including, of course, seeing you and the rest of the HHH Racing podcast crew up at Saratoga. Paul, can I last 8 days there and what, 5 days of racing, I think it's going to be.
Yeah, well, you'll see. Dr. Jeff Moore, a big fan of the show, will be there on Sunday the 30th.
Okay.
And may have, I don't know, did I get him seats that day? I don't know if I got him seats that day. Anyway, yes, he is coming in. I will be in hopefully by Tuesday the 1st, maybe earlier. You never know. You never know when I'm going to show up there. But that's exciting, Howard. I have a one that is, I think, going to run at some point. That horse Dracone that we saw at Belmont a few weeks ago ran a really good second. He should be targeted to run up there. And then there's another one that my wife has a small piece of that ran on a real soft turf at Belmont and just kind of, the jock didn't pursue on it. She's supposed to run up there probably in the second book. So, yeah, that's just an added bonus to being there, Howard.
For sure. And Patrick Kunzel, co-host of the Ben and Boozin show. Can't wait to get back up there and see everyone. Patrick was actually there for this past weekend. He lives in the New Jersey area, and he was actually there this past weekend. Patrick, can't wait to see you, buddy, and everyone else. And again, what's cool as we close the show here is there are people within this podcast. We've been on for 2.5 years, and you and Pete directly have been on the show for what, a year and a half now, or a year plus. We have not met Pete Visco. I'm not even sure he's a real person yet. We have not yet met Pete Visco in person, and I know that there's different people at the show that haven't met. Kyle Roscoe has never met Patrick Kunzel in person, and blah, blah, blah. So, but my screen is a little blurry there. So anyway, it's going to be a lot of fun. Perfect time to end the show, Paul, so my screen goes a little blurry. We've got a show tomorrow night, Benton and Boozin', Thursday night. Of course, the flagship show, Saratoga today. Check your local listings for shows here on the HHH Racing Podcast. From my good friend and co-host, Paul Halloran, this has been your host, Howard Kravitz, episode 276 of the HHH Racing Podcast. Crush your bets anywhere that you're playing, and we'll see you later on this week. Take care, everyone. Good night.
If you have not followed his Triple H Horse Racing Podcast, you're missing out. It's one of the best podcasts in the country.